I'm Irish. And when Edie and I go, not often go away, when we sign a book, I put down Irish and Edie comes along and signs British. Edie and I, the only difference we ever have is in politics.
A bit.
We differ a bit in politics, but not that serious.
No.
I think I've made her a lot more broad-minded than she was before.
I don't know about that now.
City sights, neon lights, grey skies or blue, all kinds of everything remind me of you.
While Dana was winning the Eurovision Song Contest in 1970, all kinds of mayhem was crippling her home city of Londonderry.
The 888 acres and 2 roads of this city are under our control. The writ of Stormont does not run here. We are the law within this area.
Maeve Kelly moved back to Derry to a job with the newly formed housing executive, but found it nearly impossible to work in the atmosphere of widespread protest, rioting, and organised squatting.
It really was quite awful, because you felt your housing system was going out of your control completely.
Roadblocks and checkpoints had become everyday obstacles across Northern Ireland. Maeve had difficulty getting to see her tenants through the IRA's no-go areas.
I remember one occasion going up, and there was a checkpoint there, and this young man stepped out. He says, "What's that?" and looked all around the car, and I said, "Those are files. I'll have to see them." And I said, "No, you're not seeing any such thing. Those are very private and confidential." And I thought, how am I going to get out of this situation now without a row? Or... And I just looked up, and he had a seat, balaclava on him. And I took a big chance in life, and I looked up and I said, "How's your mother, son?" He says, "My mummy's grand." And he was so innocent. I was driven on. The fella didn't even realise that I didn't know who he was. I couldn't sort of play that lark anymore. So I got myself fixed up as the rule of the day, a little pass, and that led me through, and I had no bother after that. This person is authorised by Orlag na Éireann, provisional in brackets, to have access to the Free Dairy area, signed Ducks Doherty, Bogside, CO. Oh, he was the CO.
In Fermanagh, John James Donoghue was having trouble with the checkpoint too. An official army one set up near the entrance to the only road over to his island home of Derry Kerrid.
The queues got longer and people got vexed, and the strangers got away and the locals got pulled in. For the last 5 years that they're out at the end of our road, it was really a nightmare. It got that it could take you 20 minutes to get off the island, and it could take you an hour to get back. And then it got to be an intercom, and it become that we were closed in from 5 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock the next morning. You could go out and say where you're going, and they mightn't let you out. It happened to me on a couple of occasions.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Said a joker to
The residents of Derry Kerrid held roadside protests, and eventually the army built a new high-tech watchtower on a hill a few hundred yards away.
The relations that time was very, very bad. Now we get along because we don't see each other only once in a wonder. They don't even stop us now.
Surveillance was also a key task of the Ulster Defence Regiment, a force which Ernie Scott, living over in East Antrim, joined on its formation in 1970.
We thought that if we were relieving the British Army by doing static checkpoints and one thing and another like that, and looking after electricity stations, that we were actually helping the country. For instance, the power station in Ballylumford was a favourite place for a static duty.
Ernie's checkpoint duty at Ballylumford brought him into confrontation with Ian Paisley during the Loyalist Action Council strike of 1977.
He knew full well that if he got to Ballylumford and got the workers out of Ballylumford, the strike would be successful.
Anybody, that man there is a rebel from the south of Ireland. He's not a worker here.
Hundreds of black taxis came down from Belfast and tried to gain entries, but we were successful in keeping them back. I met the Reverend Ian Paisley, I'm sure, 20 years after that, and he was shaking hands to see, I know your face, and little did he know that I was the man who kept his strike back, or I was in charge of the men who kept his strike back at Ballylumford. Had he known that, he probably would have wrung my neck rather than shake me by the hand.
The Troubles seems an inadequate title for the violence that has engulfed Northern Ireland for nearly a third of this century. Donald Sloane's nephew, a Catholic from a mixed marriage, was murdered by Protestant gunmen in Finnehy, South Belfast.
He got out of the car, and as he put the key in the door, the paramilitary stepped out from behind the bushes and shot him dead on the doorstep. I was very sad about it for the particular lad, because he was a lad. He didn't see any wrong in anybody.
John Henning was walking his greyhounds on the Shankill one morning near the Mountain View Tavern.
I was within about 20 or 30 yards from it, and it went right up in my face. And the two dogs, away they went, and from that day to this day I've never seen them since. And there were 2 or 3 killed in that one. I know a few steps, and I have been right in the middle of it. That was an issue I had.
John James Donoghue lost 2 childhood friends, Mickey Nan and Andy Murray, victims of the so-called pitchfork murders committed by soldiers in a Fermanagh farmyard.
It was a sad affair. Mickey was a terrible, nice, obliging fella, and so was Andy. No one knew then at that time who was next. See, young Bell had been shot the morning before. He was a UDR member, and his father was wounded, and the brother was wounded, I think, as well. So they thought, I suppose, that Mickey Nan had something to do with it, which we all know he had nothing to do with it.
May King, living in Dublin, heard about bomb attacks on the Drumkeen Hotel in South Belfast, which she'd once owned, and later about the murder of Jack Cochran, who'd been her head barman.
Every night he would go and meet his daughter down in the Lion Inn, and she would get off the bus. And one night, seemingly, Jack went in, and this fella came in with 2 carrier bags. He says, "Get out, you've 10 minutes." And Jack got up, and the front crowd went out, and Jack lost his life, and another woman with him. And when poor Maureen, his daughter, got off the bus, the policemen were there, and the ambulance and everything else, and they took her around all the hospitals to see could they find him, but he was up in the morgue. That's how he lost his life. It was terrible when Jack died. So unfair. And then little Janet Breen, you remember the Abercorn disaster? Her mother came to see me the other day. She went down for a cup of coffee with another little friend to the Abercorn. And 2 girls left a case behind them. The bomb was in the case.
Sir John Leslie was living in Rome when the Troubles began, but couldn't escape news of terrible events near his home in County Monaghan.
In Italy, on the television, it showed Tynan Abbey smouldering after the murder of Sir Norman Strong and his son James. I was saddened. I mean, they were good friends of ours, and appalled by it. And then there was the bomb in Monaghan, a town. At the same time, there were 2 bombs in Dublin, I think 1974. Those were really the worst moments.
Ernie Scott's UDR service took him away from the familiar farmland of East Antrim to the border country.
Nearly every weekend, we would have flown down to the border in helicopters and helped the army, the British Army, out on foot patrols. And I'll tell you one thing, you had to be able to read a map. When you saw green phone boxes, you knew it was time to get back up north again. It was certainly dangerous work. I remember one Sunday morning, camping out all night and just overlooking the border. And we were attacked that morning from across the border by machine gun fire. And it was rattling from the trees above our heads. And believe you me, when you're under fire, you get your head down, it doesn't matter who you are. But we couldn't see where it was coming from, therefore our 2 guns couldn't get permission to fire. But you might have killed some poor farmer looking after his cattle on the other side.
In the early years of his UDR service, Ernie was a part-time soldier. His day job was selling agricultural equipment to farms all over Northern Ireland.
I was down at the border one day near Forkhill and was putting in a washer to this particular chap, and he had a little avenue down onto the road. And while I was working away, he was standing beside me. He says, "Ach, there's the boys way up the road." And I looked down and I saw about 7 men walking up past the end of the avenue. Oh, see, that's the local unit, the IRA. No, says I, is that what they are? Had they come up onto that farm, I don't know what would have happened. The unfortunate thing was I had my identification in my wallet. And after that, I never carried identification down near the border, but I chucked the job on after that.
Ernie became a full-time member of the regiment, served 12 years and retired with the rank of Major. For Maeve Kelly, like most Derry people, the memories are of Bloody Sunday. Maeve was at Mass that afternoon.
Father Mulvey was saying it, and then a little altar boy came out and whispered something into his ear, and he went in, and he came out again. He said, "This is to just tell you we have to pray very hard because 2 people are killed in the Bogside." Well, it was absolutely horrendous. He goes in and out, keeps going in and out with this wee altar boy, in and out, until at last he comes out and he says, "I have very sorry news for you. There are now 14 people dead." A sort of a cry went round because it was unbelievable bringing it up to that. They were all tenants of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. They were all, which meant that the next couple of days, my boss asked me to come round, and we went to 13, as they say in Derry, wake houses, with 12 coffins opened and 1 closed, because his head was blown off. It was the saddest time. I never will forget that.
The first experience that I had was a massive car bomb in the Knocknamoe Castle Hotel grounds early in the Troubles that killed 5 soldiers outright. We spent most of the night literally picking up pieces of those soldiers that were literally blown into the trees that surrounded the hotel. And I can remember very well seeing skin hanging on the branches of trees. And that was a sight that I'll remember for always.
Jean Lamy remembers regular bomb attacks on Strabane town centre. One blast destroyed the library she'd started and built up over many years.
It burnt for days. The library that I loved so much. Because the books smouldered and made a terrible smoke. And it's extraordinary what you can get used to. Eventually you didn't bother getting out of bed. The house shook and cracks appeared, and you felt that you were very lucky to have missed that one. We went through a very bad period. It's a wonder that there's still such tolerance and still such a friendly feeling in this town.
For Jean Lamy and her generation, death and destruction have been an ever-present and depressing backdrop to the entire century.
I was living during the Troubles in 1916, in 1922, and then it would quiet down for a bit, and then it will all start up again. It's something that's forever with us, I think. I can't remember a time that you could say you had complete peace in Ireland, not in my lifetime.
Years ago, when you didn't know what was coming, next hour or the next day, you put up with it because you were younger. But if it happened again, I couldn't cope, and lots of people with me couldn't cope anymore because it was too severe, it was too awful.
Over left? Yeah, sit over there.
There was relief from the violence and civic attempts to shake off the gloom. When marathon fever broke out in the 80s, Belfast City Council decided to stage a race despite the security risks. Thousands took part in the first run in 1982, including John Henning, now a pensioner.
The powers that be got in touch with me and asked me what I run on, including my record of having 110 Northern Ireland Marathon Championships in 2000. And I didn't want to do it because I hadn't run a marathon for 22 years, but I had kept training, but not marathon training, because I used to do 100 miles a week.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Eventually I did running. There were crowds the whole way around. It was terrific. The streets were out, were like the 12th of July. There were 3,500 runners in the race, and I finished 1,010, but there was more behind me than was in front of me. And my time at 72 years of age was 4 hours and a half.
2 years later, John's wife Sadie died of a heart attack on the eve of their 52nd wedding anniversary.
We had a pact between us that whoever was going out always kissed the other one. Because I always said it could be our last kiss. Because life's short and you don't know when you're going to be called away. But on that particular day, her and my sister went out to go to the hairdresser, which is just at the top of my own street here, to get our hair done because we're getting taken out for Sunday on the Saturday for our anniversary. And my sister come back down about 2 minutes and she says, John, Sidious fell at the top of the street. When I run up, that was the last time I'd seen Sidious. Never got my last kiss. Died in the hospital.
John's wife missed out on his proudest moment a year later, when in recognition of his marathon running and a lifetime's service to athletics, the Shankill Roadman was awarded an MBE.
You were instructed to walk nicely up when your name was called, turn round, face her and give her a polite bow. And then when you got that done, put the medal on, shook hands with you, you took 2 steps back give her a north light bow, and then away. But after I came away from it, my son said, "You're stupid." I said, "What have I done now?" He said, "When you got your medal, you just walk back on the way out." So I forgot to stop and give her a bow. But I got my medal, I'm very proud of it. And the only disappointment I had in that, my wife had died 10 months before it, and that took a wee bit of the gloss of it, which she had been in her glory.
Down in Fermanagh, George Sheridan got married, although in the tradition of hill farmers, he left it late. George and Edie now run a post office near Florence Court, dispensing stamps, giros and pensions. It's a valuable service in an isolated community.
Could I have a book of first class stamps, please, and 2 airmen?
2 airmen, right.
How's George getting on?
Yeah, very good, yeah, the best. Yeah.
That is a big competition at the back.
Lovely, thanks, Edie, thank you. That's it, so I'm seeing this all
right. Thank you, Kay. Thank you very much.
But marriage for George meant a tough decision.
Edie wouldn't come and live in Gartree with me. She said, "You'll come and live with me in Wheathill and you can run your farm." But we got so busy here, only an odd time I go up Gartree now. I was a mountain man and still am, and I used to say, "Now I'll not live long when I'm not able to run around the rocks." I still love to go up of a good day. It's just the place where you're born, and it's a wonderful place.
I got married in 1976 to McKelly, a man I'd known all my life.
You married late in life?
Yes.
Why?
Because I never found anybody who set me off, or that I was interested enough. But I always liked Mick. Oh, the wedding, my wedding. Don't talk to me about my wedding. We went to a little quiet church down in Muff and away out to Kildrum Country Club, where we had a lovely meal all laid on, and then came back and went away for a few days.
6 weeks later, Maeve's brother-in-law, a priest, brought her alarming news.
He says, "You know, you're not married."
The priest who'd officiated at the wedding had forgotten to ask Mick and Maeve to sign the register.
So we had to go back down to Muff, God, gather all the people together who were there, down there, get married all over again, and I said, "Let's do the thing right," and away out to Kildrum again. Got the whole thing done. So that's married twice. And Mick died 2 years ago of heart failure, big bad heart attack, over in Galvin Hospital.
Way back when he was a youngster, Donald Sloane walked to school with Toti Beale, daughter of the Beale family who rescued the Sloanes when they were made homeless. One day, 60 years later, and now a widower living in Lisburn, Donald called to see Toti again.
Toti was outside at the back of the hedge there weeding, and I put my head through the gate and I said, "You can say a prayer for me there whenever you're down." So we come in and had a chat, and she said, "You'll come back again." So that's how it started, and I became a regular visitor. And she was on her own and I was on my own, and we decided that we would get married. I was 79. Toti would be about 73 or 72. I wanted her to come and live with me in Lisburn, but I couldn't get her to move. So in the end, I compromised and I came down here. So that's how I come back to Sea Hill. Toti and I were married for 9 years, and then she took this illness. She was ill for about 6 months, so I'm on my second time.
Well, never my wife died, I would become a recluse. I had me over the door for about 3 months, and I sat down and I wrote out my resignation to all the organisations that I belonged to, because my life had gone, as far as I was concerned. But then I went to church every Sunday, and I never missed that. And then during one of the times, this woman came over to me and said, "John, I was trying to hear about you losing your wife. How you keeping?" Now that was Josie. Dear
Your
Simon,
bill now?
I thought you were never coming. She comes to me about 4 days every week, makes me food. When we walk up the Shankill, get our messages, and I leave her back home. I never stay overnight. I mean, last week, couldn't get over £100 in the Shankill.
That's right.
And the days that she's not here, she makes me the dinner for the next day. So I'm lost without her. I know I would. Because you've done enough.
Josie was born on the Shankill, but now lives on the far side of Belfast.
You want to see the way she's put on?
Both families have persuaded them against marrying, but it hasn't stopped romance blossoming.
I still have our tips, and we always say to each other, "Oh, it's a good job we didn't get married because we wouldn't be able to stick a look of each other." But we're still here.
The Shankill Road that John and Josie grew up on has all but disappeared. Recession closed the linen mills that provided work for most families. In the 60s and 70s, slum clearance swept away the old back streets of mill houses, transplanting John a short distance away in a modern terraced house.
It was great to come into a house with 3 rooms upstairs, a bathroom, and with an outside toilet and a closed-in yard, and an indoor toilet, so we're living in heaven from what they used to be. It's great.
But although the slums are gone, John and many of his neighbours feel the redevelopment has bled the heart out of the Shankill.
The redevelopment of Shankill caused an evacuation of the Shankill, an accident. So it did, because the people were getting promised lovely houses at Rathcoole and Ballybean and everywhere but Belfast. The Shankill is not the same as it was, and it never will be. Too many houses pulled down and not enough put up. Too many shops all boarded up, nobody taking them. They're not the same neighbouriness now as they used to be. The Shankill will never be the same as it was, but for to go outside to live like where Josie's going, or well, she doesn't like it herself, and I'm sure I wouldn't like it. I couldn't leave this Shankill. No, never, never. I was a Shankill roadman, and I'd always be a Shankill roadman.
As far as Maeve Kelly's concerned, the changes in housing have all been for the good. She still remembers the excitement with which tenants moved into new homes on estates like the Cregan.
It was a new life, a new beginning for them, this new house. Their own front door, their own back door. They'd never seen as much green grass in their lives. That was the first thing they noticed. Then they were absolutely thrilled that you could actually, with one wee switch, turn on lights. One turn on water. If you lit a fire, you get hot water, and there was a bath. The house laid out better. But the most important thing was a bigger kitchen. That's where the family all meet and eat. It was another world that they thoroughly required and thoroughly needed.
Modern healthcare is yet another world that was thoroughly needed. Modern hospitals provide a range of surgery and treatments that Haldane Mitchell could scarcely have imagined when he qualified as a young doctor in the early 60s.
The staying time of patients in hospital has been greatly reduced. Major operations allow people home now in 3 or 4 days, whereas years ago you could have been in hospital for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Now endoscopic surgery allows you home in maybe 3 days. I mean, this is where the advancement in medicine is, and it's less traumatizing to the patient. The patient doesn't have the same period of pain after an operation, and they get better much quicker.
Despite soaring costs, the National Health Service still tries to provide medical care for everyone, from the cradle to the grave.
Our social services now can give a much better care in the home that allows the elderly to stay at home. There's not the same numbers of people that have to be hospitalised now. That's the important thing from the care of the elderly.
When Sir John Leslie moved back permanently from Rome to Glasloch in 1993, the old order had changed dramatically. High wages and running costs had meant the end of a permanent staff of maids, butlers and gamekeepers. Major repairs were required to the estate. The family decided to open part of the house to paying guests. But first, the roof had to be fixed.
The lead flat part in the middle, the gutters, the flashings had all cracked, so we had to put 3 tons of new lead on. We had to raise money by selling about 90 old oak trees in the park. And these oak trees were 200 years old. They brought in £25,000. The government gave us the other 25,000 because it's open to the public 90 days a year. The oak trees went, you remember there was a big fire at Windsor Castle about 5 years ago. We went to mend the roof, Windsor Castle. One beam was 47 feet long.
Most of Castle Leslie's income is now earned from catering and accommodation. But Sir John doesn't mind the constant intrusion of strangers.
He keeps the house open and a lot of pleasant people come and they seem to take an interest in the place.
Sir John now spends a lot of his time showing visitors a glimpse of a way of life that has all but disappeared.
Well, so he sent to Berlin and he got this old Bechstein. You can see what's written here. By special appointment to their Majesties, Emperors and Kings. Well, it's over 100 years old, but it's got rather a remarkable tone. A lot of very good things have come. When I was a boy, the nobility and the landed gentry simply really more or less ruled everything. And the other 49 million was simply the public. They voted, but that was all they did. It's a different social order. We're all equal.
After their success in getting the army checkpoint relocated, the residents of Derry Kerib formed a community association. Their first campaign was for a new bridge to the island to replace the one built 50 years earlier.
It was starting to deteriorate with holes in the sleepers and it was going out on the sides with the weights of lorries. We had a site meeting that harvest, and one councillor went up and he looked at it and he says, "Would a fire engine cross this?" And we said, "Don't know, probably." So we measured it and it couldn't get across. So the new bridge then started, and in June 1992 it opened, and we had a big celebration at it. You see, if you're only working on your own, you're only a voice in the wilderness. But when you get a community going, you have a number of people, a number of voices, and it has to be heard.
The new bridge leads to a less isolated, more prosperous Derry Kerrib.
Things started to improve after we joined the EEC. Over the last 25 years, we'd have got good grants to drain the land, to make roads through the land, to hang gates on the land, to build sheds for the cattle. There'd probably have been a thatched house yet if it wasn't for the grants coming in.
But greater outside support has also meant a reining in of the farmers' traditional independence.
They have mapped out a certain area, the foreshore, that you can't plough or do anything without asking their permission. And then the bottoms that flood along the rivers, you're not supposed to graze them now till the 1st of June. There's some meadows has to be left for hay meadows because due to the corn crake. Farming is becoming more of a business this last 3 or 4 years. There's VAT, there's income tax, there's records of all descriptions to be kept. I'm just lucky enough to have the son here that can do the farm accounts. Jared will take over the farm, hopefully. If he came and said he didn't want it, I would be sad, because I'd like to see it going on for the next generation after generation, because it come up that way, the hard way. He went to the agricultural college in Enniskillen for a year. He would be a good farmer, he has a good head on his shoulders.
A good education is needed and sought after in all walks of life nowadays. When Haldane Mitchell went to Queen's in the early 50s, there were just 3,000 students. That was the start of the era of free education. Now, Queen's has 15,000.
I think the welfare state has done wonders right across the board. It's given the opportunity right down now to folk of poor financial standing. They can get to university and they can get to whatever level of education they want to aspire to, for example, medicine or law or accountancy, whatever they want to, whereas certainly prior to 48, the chances just were not there.
I look down at the local grammar school here and I see the 1,500 pupils. And where on earth they're going to get jobs, I have no idea. There is no country in the world that can afford to keep that welfare burden going.
In my day coming up, you would have thought that was stupid. You know, you could only read and write and that was that. But there wasn't as many BA and all going to go. I always told people that I got a BA. Oh, would you get a BA for? I did. Belmont assistant.
John Henning's generation grew up in an era of strict discipline in the family and the school. Many of them are dismayed at what they see as a fall in standards of behaviour.
Children, I don't think, have the same respect, or they will talk out more. I mean, everyone's called by their Christian name, no matter how old they are. You know, it doesn't really show respect.
I was slapped at school, and I never was slapped, but I deserved it, and I never held it against my teacher.
I think they should have more control over them, you know, which I think, you know, it sort of spoiled at that no K and no. Well, I wouldn't believe now in thrashing a child, but at least they have to be punished.
Yes.
May King spent a lifetime in the entertainment world, and she liked to cut a dash in her day.
Here are the Spice Girls.
But she's less than impressed by the brash antics of current performers. Others agree.
The Spice Girls, what do they do for a living except walk about with half naked?
They're not good looking, number one. They haven't any talent. They can't sing and they can't dance.
Now don't go wasting my precious time. Get your act together, we could be just fine.
They've got thighs, but we all have thighs. You can see plenty of thighs if you go to the seaside.
Well, if you are a singer, why strip off half naked to sing? Wouldn't it be better with your clothes on you?
So here's a story from A to Z. You wanna get with me, you gotta listen carefully. You got M in the place who likes it in your face.
All they can do is to shock. And unfortunately, that's what they're doing. But what annoys me is there are young girls coming along think that that's okay, and it's not okay. It's not entertainment.
If you wanna be my lover.
There's more temptation now. There's drugs, there's drink, there's sex, there's what have you. Which, there might have been the latter one in our time, a little of it. There was very little drinking, there was only the few did it. But they have a tough life now.
Whatever their thoughts and concerns on youth, the older generation have got on with their own pursuits. Down in Fermanagh, the sort of entertainment that May King would approve of is making a comeback. John James Donahue and his wife Anna can relive the show band era at a more sedate pace.
Dancing was her hobby and dancing was my hobby, and we're still at it. The quick steps, slow foxtrot, waltzing, slow waltz, wee bit of cha-cha. Oh, I like the jive too. I was very fond of the jive. But this is suits you as you get older. Oh, it's got very common now this last 7 to 8 years. You know, it's gaining momentum now. Every wee hall nearly wants it now. It's exercise in the first place, and you get out and you meet different people and you have a chat, and it's a couple of hours gone some night, and great pastime.
When Donald Sloane's beloved Ulster Amateur Flute Band was bombed out of its practice room in North Belfast in the 70s, he took his flute elsewhere, and he's still not out of breath, even at 91.
I joined the Ravenhill, and I've been there since. I'm about 20 years in the Ravenhill now. You get a great atmosphere and quite a bit of bantering with one thing and another, but particularly now since the ladies came into the band. That was the change in the flute band, the girls coming in. They've been the backbone of some of the band. They've been the backbone of the Ravenhill band. Well, I have one sitting beside me at the moment, and I think she's about 9.
At 88 years of age, John Henning still works out occasionally at Shankill Leisure Centre, a far cry from his early training environment.
What it was an ordinary gym with a bicycle and a rowing machine type, but the old-fashioned stuff. And there were no such things as the treadmill. Well, the trainers and all have the days out of this world, for they're all padded right up round the ankles, and the sole's all spongy, about an inch thick. I ran from Dublin to Belfast, 104 miles, and what we used to call mutton dummies. Half a crown a pair, or 30p a day at prices. Now they got up to £100 for training shoes. It's all different from my day. If I had this in my running days when I was younger, I don't know what sort of runner I'd been.
May King stayed in Dublin for most of the Troubles, but moved back to Belfast 10 years ago to Nazareth House on the Ormeau Road. After a busy career running dance classes, ballrooms and a hotel, she's happy at 91 years of age to let others look after her now.
With it here, there's no income tax man, there's no bank manager, there's no staff, there's nobody leaving. You're free. You can close your door and you can be private. There's no one going to say, come on, you're late. But I have had that all my life. When you go into the dining room, you listen to all the gossip. Then there's visitors come in. You're busy all the time. It's lovely. You wouldn't be lonely here. Too much work to do. I work the elevator going to church in the morning, work it coming down. And when we go to the little prayer circle, I line them all up. Come on, Brown's cows, and we all get into the elevator and go up. I'm working hard here, and I'm not paid for it.
Tell me the story.
And that's the way life's been. A century of hard work, thrift, resilience, good times and bad.
It's hard to believe in this day and age what the people in my day went through when they were young.
Well, you just had to make the best of it. There were no social services or anything then.
Those towns were pretty close to being Stony Brook.
I've seen us going and gathering potatoes before we went to school.
Some females in those days simply got old before their time.
And it was still a man's world, and I think still is.
Great progress has been made. But in politics, compromise and agreement are as elusive as ever. Opinions are varied and, for the most part, firmly held.
I'd regard myself as Irish.
It is important to me to be British. I prefer that as it is now, rather than a united Ireland.
I would prefer to be Irish, very much.
British is on my passport, but I would consider myself an Ulster Scot, really.
Yeah, I feel equally at home either way.
Well, I regard myself as British, although I'm an Irishman. I was born in the island of Ireland, so I'm bound to be an Irishman, but I'm a British Irishman.
The border is less relevant economically, but still a powerful focus of dispute.
You're being a bit timid of going into an All-Ireland again. I would feel it would be maybe put under the hammer.
I think it would be better for the whole of Ireland, like if it was all under the one unit. There'd be more monies, there'd be piles of monies flushing in if it was a whole Ireland.
I don't know, I'm quite happy as I am the way things are.
They always looked on it as a blemish, so in that way I would like to see it gone, just removed quietly like wiping a slate.
It will become a united Ireland at some time. I necessarily don't want it to be on my time nor my children's time.
Tell me the facts real straight.
And the saga is set to continue.
Well, as long as there's no violence, that's the chief thing.
Tell me you see the light.
You wouldn't know what way things would go. I wouldn't like to be that lady, Miss, what is her name, Mo Mullen. I wouldn't. It's a terrible job for anyone to have. She doesn't know where she is.
Okay. Hold on. Do any of you fight?
Hang on.